Hey guys, we are live, I believe. Hello everybody. I'm making some noises because we had a nice drum kit in this last week. And last week, that was a quite exciting live stream about the ratcheting or ratcheting. Yeah, I butchered again. But that doesn't matter. We had a very good stream. I had a lot of response afterward about this ratcheting. It's essentially a thing which was done on the MOOC sequencer. And what happened is that it could trigger on a certain step. It would not play the step just once, like an eighth note, but would then play, instead of one note, it would play 4 notes or 2 notes. And so somebody did ask me, and I created some sequences. The presets you can download from last week. Maybe you can recall this preset, and we use then. Here's the how I did this type of sequencing inside Sublime Bass 2. And then I made 3 presets of it. Another one was this one. And you see, sometimes it pops up, and that is done using the, let's close this one, okay, let's close also this one, so I have a good image. So here we have Sublime Bass 2, and you see in the pattern, it plays, if you go to the pattern view, it plays the sequence A, sequence A, sequence A, and then sequence B. And if I would play them solo, you would have sequence A, yes, and then sequence B, you can hear. And of course, if that is right away each time the same, that's not sounding interesting. Therefore, we have the pattern mode where you can say, okay, I need to put it on. So these type of sequences you really can create using Sublime Bass. And somebody asked about doing this in B.I.T. And in B.I.T, this is a bit different because B.I.T has 16 steps, but not multiple sequences. It's more an arpeggiator, which also can work a bit like a sequencer mode. So that gave me some thoughts. And one thought, which is, and that's nice of the live stream, then things pop up. Because while doing this here in Sublime Bass 2, I made a new image for doing in the future. What we do in an update is namely that I like to improve the sequencer page a bit. And here you see that I like to have this A, B, C, D sequencer selecting for which sequence you like to add it, to make this bigger with below it added. Then also an extra menu here which is mentioning playing sequence A. So that kind of thing triggered last week the whole session. I thought, hey, we should do this better. So in the very near future, we have an update for Sublime Bass 2, which will have, by the way, also a bigger screen version, 200%. There's already a big screen version, but not a 200% version. And we will increase this box here. We add edit, so that's more clear what it does, that you select here the edit page for editing the sequencer. And there was another thing, if you are in the pattern edit mode, we need to add a row which does say the number, which is also not in the current version. So there's always something to improve. And so that did trigger the last session. And what it also triggered was the idea of this ratcheting, or how they call it, to create that one also in B.I.T. Well, also that I gave a thought, and in the future we will do this. And here you can see in the future update, so it really triggered some interesting ideas, because I never heard about this ratcheting feature I used a Korg MS-20 in the past with the SQ10 sequencer, and that never had this. What I did in the SQ10 to have half notes or triple notes is simply take one row and connect that to the clock. So then it could do these different note lengths, but there was never a ratcheting thing inside the SQ10 sequencer. And this was already something inside the Moog sequencer, and also appears in other sequencers, hardware sequencers. So I thought, yeah, this would be a cool idea. Essentially, a B.I.T has an arpeggiator, but still, because you can also use it in a sequence mode with 16 steps, and you see therefore is a tune, and we even have here a mode. Now the mode is telling up, but that would be then sequencers. And what I did is create one extra row. So that will be then the ratcheting. So if you select on 6 ratcheting, ratcheting, it would mean that that step would, instead of playing one note, it would play 2 notes. So if, for instance, this would be then 1/16th note, and the ratcheting will be done playing twice a 1/32th note, so 1/32 note. Or if you put off one of the steps so that you make more a 8-note groove, then essentially we can see to make there also a feature that you can adjust the amount of ratcheting. And then you see down here I have an extra feature, because if this ratcheting is appearing each time, that can be annoying. It's nice if it be, let's say, after 1 bar or 2 bars. So here there is a ratcheting repeat, and there you can select that it should be after 2 cycles, 3 cycles. And maybe it would be also an interesting idea, because we have the velocity setting here, which means that if the velocity fully to the right, to the left, that the velocity setting of the sequencer is dominant. And then we could make it the case that with the velocity of the keyboard, you can activate the ratcheting steps. So if you would play above 100, that then the ratcheting would appear. So I'm writing this down, and so you see, live stream is also good for creating some new ideas in our products. And so I also learned last week something, because I never heard about this feature, this ratcheting. I really butchered the name. Okay, so that did trigger this, and so we're gonna add this maybe already in Blade 2, because there we are working on now. Maybe we can do this ratcheting also already in Blade 2, and then we can test it already, so that it's a bit easier to add this in B.I.T. Okay. Now let me see in the chat room. I see some people there. Hello, everybody. And I also had an email from somebody, and that's the subject of today, is about, Rob, could you tell me about these particular presets? What's the story behind it? And the subject is then today, B.I.T, and how these presets, how I developed them, and what's the idea behind it, and what happened. And sometimes it might be surprising how things work in my mind in creating presets. Okay, but before we do that, there's another thing I like to mention, because if I play now all the sequences with the special sequence stuff, there's another one. And we were so busy last week that I forgot to mention that we also have, of course, Predator 2. And Predator 2 has an extra row here, which is called offset. And this row is used here to move the step backwards or forward to create triple notes. You can hear it in this section, or let's put off the bypass. And of course, with Predator 2, we have the option to play 2 sequences, up A and B, and join makes that each do play after each other. So what I could do is Op E and copy Op A to B, and then I would playing now B, which is the same, and then I could put this off. And then if I have join, I have one with, and down here you can see, now I'm editing, of course. This is for editing, and down here you see which one is playing. So Op A is playing, Op B is playing, Op A is playing, Op B is playing. So also with Predator 2, you can do some interesting things simple by the offset, by moving the notes in position, because a triple is essentially on a certain beat that this beat combines 3 notes which are close to this beat. Yeah, hard to explain, but anybody who has a bit of knowledge musically, I think, understands what I mean by that. And yeah, maybe in the future we could add even more. So not only offset, but also a different mode, not offset, but then this again this ratcheting mode. So okay, so that I forgot to mention, that was Predator 2 with its sequencer, ARP sequencer, because now it's in sequencer mode, you see. And you see, here I have all different modes, and sequencer modes is essentially that it doesn't play like an arpeggiator. Because if I would play now, it's up. You see, and now plays the whole rhythm as a, which is very interesting. Especially if you then take a bit of a delay, mono delay. But with the sequencer mode, it's simply one note sequencer. And interesting is also what you could do is chord mode. Yeah, many options, as you can see. Okay, let's check the chat room, because yeah, today, as mentioned, we're going to talk about B.I.T. And this person, his name is called Jason, if I'm not wrong, emailed me with this picture, and he said, Rob, can you tell a bit more about these presets? So he had from the pad bank, from B.I.T, dark cloud pads, gloss pad, some of the presets here, and he had 3 images. And if you also like to be something which is interesting to discuss, please send me an email to info@robpapen.com. One particular presets you like. Of course, it should be one of my own presets, because I cannot explain the presets from Jamal, for instance, which would also be a cool to have Jamal joining and that he could tell about it. But I have to ask him for this. So yeah, and the third one is this one here. These from the sequencer, ARP sequencer bank, the modulator sequencer he likes to ask, and the Chase 03 modulation wheel. I'm not sure if I can disk all of them, but what I did is, of course, when we go here to my yeah, sorry for flying with all these screens. So here we go. There is B.I.T again. So what I did copy over and it's give it a star. So tingling. So that will be one sounds he likes to be explained. This one. Then yeah, and then and not sure if this one also was selected by him. Synth, no, that one was not selected. So he, in this bank, what I notice, he is interested in the different modulation which is used. But before I start, let's go to the live stream. The person who emailed me is not in the chat room because he has to work, and that's also another idea to have maybe someday also an extra live stream on a different time setting, because some people, have a different time zone and they also would join live in the chat room. So that's an idea what I like to do maybe next week, and I will announce this on Twitter. So I will watch what could be an interesting time setting. Okay, back to the live stream. Okay. Well, the other one, so let's start now. So I go now to the other one he did mention was in the up and sequences, chaser sequence. That was one of them. So let's start with this one, the chase, which is more like if you have indeed a let's mute the other things. If you indeed have a kind of chasing event in a movie, you know, with a Okay, let me think what I did here. Well, we see the first oscillator has noise, the second oscillator has square, and the sub-oscillator is also used. Now, I will shut down now the oscillators to see what oscillator 1 does. So this is definitely a combination patch where I combine two sounds together. So this is noise, very short percussive sound, and I might go to the advanced panel to see see if something else is used. Yeah, the volume, you see, if you go down, that has a ring around it. Once it has a ring around it, it means that it is used. And you see here it's using a short envelope to make this sound shorter. If I go double click here, the amount goes to 0, and then it will be like this. And that's too much. Also an interesting sound, but for some reason I wanted to have it as a kind of higher type of thing. So that's a cool thing about B.I.T. It has this advanced page with the fact that you have a little envelope, an LFO, for modulating parts inside of this oscillator. So you see this is not used, this is not used, tune is not used, but volume, that one, is active and used. So that's oscillator 1, and to have control about the sound, the other thing I notice here, if I go to filter 1 and filter 2, is that there is a split oscillator, which means that oscillator 1 goes into filter 1 and oscillator 2 goes in filter 2. And to make this sound from oscillator 1, which is this hi-hat, so snappy, I choose a bandpass filter, and a bandpass filter is essentially a low-pass filter and a high-pass filter after each other. So it filters off the high frequencies, but also the low frequency. And so it creates a kind of notch. And so I put that with the cutoff frequency on a special spot, because you see when I go down, it's too dark, and too high is maybe too thin. So I search for the sweet spot, and it has a bit of change by the velocity, which controls the cutoff, by the sequencer, which has here its own setting. So this is part of the sound, and the other sound is essentially oscillator 2. And you see it moves quite a lot. Well, this movement is also in the advanced page. You see here, oscillator wave modulation. Sounds a bit like a chorus, although there's no chorus used here. And what is cool about the square waveform, you see it here displayed, is that if you change the symmetry of it, which is here, you can make it thinner. And of course, you could do this manually, but that gets you RZ. So this is 50%. So this is the equal, this is like a square or a 50% pulse. And if you go to the advanced page, you can, the symmetry, you can modulate. And you see there's a ring here around the symmetry. And when I go down and click on this, you can see that the amount of the LFO is open. So the LFO, so let's shut down the delay so that you hear it a bit better. So double click means that's a square. It's really a square. Hear that? And opening the, it's like the Uno 60 type of thing. Well, there's also a sub oscillator, so I've shut that down now. So here this is the symmetry modulation. We'll go back to the advanced. I can make it slower. You hear that? Little change. And of course you can make it deeper with opening the amount. It displays it again. Now you get this typical unit sound. If I would put on the chorus, I have a unit 60. Of course, I'm changing the sound now. So this is the body, and I added then also this sub oscillator for the low rumble. And the delay. So now I changed the sound a bit, you see still. Let's see, this was the original one. A bit nicer, a bit softer. And the edited one, I like it, so I really should save this one. Oh, let's see, chat room. Okay, so let's see. I go to the manager to see if that I don't. So okay, so I saved this one as version 4. Save preset as, and that's also what I do. If I really hear, okay, this makes sense, even if it's a little change, it can be a big change to the impression of the sound. I save it. And this would be then the Chase 04 mod wheel. I will make it as a download in the info section, so you can download it. So that was this idea for this preset. The other preset he did ask, it's also sequencer. Oh, by the way, I did the other one with the chorus really made it. So let's go back about my way of thinking, because we had this one. This was the original one, but and now and this one is without chorus, and this one is with chorus. It depends on your music beats if this is better than the other one. You see, by adding chorus, it gets more swirly, but it depends if it really adds something to your piece of music. So let's go back. I'm checking the chat room if I don't miss anything. Let me see. No, everything is cool. So let's go to another preset. And maybe the best thing is that I take a sequencer sound and now take a synth sound, which Jason did mention, which you found interesting to talk about. Matrix time synth. Now here again, because B.I.T is essentially a subtractive synthesizer. But if you have a modular synthesizer which has more inputs, you also can modulate another oscillator with another oscillator, which is also possible inside a B.I.T. It would be frequency modulation, FM. What you hear now in this preset is essentially a two-operator FM synthesizer. So oscillator 1 is modulating oscillator 2. So oscillator 2 has a sinus waveform. And it's modulated by oscillator 1. And that's why we have this little button here to filter, that you can shut that off. Because if you modulate, you don't want to hear the modulating sound, because it could be different tuned. And it's even the case that if you have this on and you go here, it automatically goes off. You see, if I have feedback here, which is the oscillator feedback, you see filter is active, but then when I go to phase modulation or frequency modulation or ring modulation, it goes off. And we did that on purpose because that's a very good way to use it. And if you think, okay, I still want to hear it on the oscillator, you can still put it on. So these are little things about what we did inside of it. But what happens here? So phase modulation is essentially what is done by DX7 or Casio phase synthesizer. You modulate the phase of the waveform. And if you do this, okay, let me open oscillator 1. Starts to get this sort. You hear it's this typical FM type thing. So here's an amount, but of course the volume of the lost oscillator is already a kind of amount, but you still have an amount here. So you have two amount controls essentially. Now, what is happening again here in this oscillator 1 is that the modulation of this oscillator is not constant. It is a very short modulation. And this is again done by using, you see, the volume is active by using this volume envelope here. Volume envelope L mount is open. If I shut it off, which is in the middle, it constantly modulates. You can kind of bell sounds. Of course, this is too long, so make it. So a volume control envelope is handy, and this is inside this events page. And so this is now more a bell sound. And you see this expands by this little thing, by just adding this phase modulation, frequency modulation, ring, it expands the sound possibilities enormous. And these, I'm not sure if phase modulation is possible on an analog synth. I guess it should be. Frequency modulation is essentially the same as putting an LFO on it, and ring modulation is of course possible. So by adding this section here and the fact that you have still little controls inside the oscillator, this synth goes much deeper than a traditional virtual analog machine. They even could re-trigger it. And now sync, you see up here. Yeah, crazy synth, isn't it? But let's go back to this sound. So what I thought is making a kind of FM type sound. So I use this, I go back to the original. I use oscillator 2, which is a sine. waveform, and then oscillator 2 is modulating in. And then I search simply by changing the octave or the semi. I search for a nice tone. And I found for sure then this a nice tone. And I adjusted the envelope. So you see here this envelope. And then essentially this sound was already for a big part ready to go. And it goes to a low pass filter here, and it's in stereo, and a high pass filter, and that's most likely to get away a bit of the lower harmonics, although it's not that much. So this yeah, you get a bit more percussive, different sounding synth. And yeah, velocity you see is also connected in the mod matrix to the feedback modulation. So if you hit hard, and I see on noise oscillator volume 100%, although that one is not used. So that's the leftover, I think, during the programming. Another sound he mentioned is tingling, which is very similar, but it has a totally different feel. Really spacey. Soft tone. Again here, sinus tone, sinus waveform, again modulated by oscillator 1, also phase modulation, but the tuning is much different. You see +4 octaves, much higher. And this high octave makes this ting, therefore it's called tingling. And also here the volume envelope, this is too long, makes this short ting. And then of course to make it a bit swirly, which is always nice on electric type of piano, I put on the chorus. I'm using the sustain pedal here. So this is the more the FM type of sound by simply using B.I.T. And it's interesting that he picked this sound because all of the ones he selected, he most likely did wonder how did he get this tone, and it's this phase modulation, also with the tubular bells. And interesting, if you change here or take FM, it's much different. Or ring. So you need to have the right tuning. And and I don't do this often, but if you would use here then unison, make it a bit dirty. But that's more heavy on the CPU, of course. Yeah, you see, this little advanced panel and this FM whole thing is a very powerful part inside of B.I.T. So I'm checking here. No, there's not a third filter. The third filter you will find inside Predator 2, which is a high pass filter. Tingling, yeah, it's a name. So let's go to another sound, which was in the pet sounds, I think. He had a question about the pet sounds. Where are they? Oops. Here, and indeed a bit like a mellotron, but of course not like a... I made the release a bit shorter. And again, here is the oscillator is modulating, but then frequency modulation, but it still goes to the filter. So and the modulation is on audio. So this is the sine, and it's on audio level. It's modulating the oscillator 2. So if I put down the oscillator 1 going to oscillator 2, so just by this particular position, I need to find it back. Okay, I doing it wrong. So now oscillator 1 is not, you cannot hear, but it only modulates oscillator 2. Interesting, isn't it? If I pick now, the whole sound is gone. Phase modulation is with this setting, disaster. Also ring, it's really the frequency modulation audio. So picture a LFO which is on high speed modulating the other oscillator and generates these overtones. And therefore I called it the mellotron type of thing. And so this is just by playing around. So what most likely did happen, because sometimes creating sounds is very organic. Sometimes I really do. For instance, what could be happening is that I picked this and then was modulating. Hey, suddenly hit this and thought, hey, this is interesting. And then I added still the oscillator to the... So then that's how the sound is created. It's not all, let's say, it's all, also, how I explain it, very organic. So the moment sometimes I try things out and suddenly you hit with one dial an interesting thing. And then that's the thing you really need to focus on. The moment when you hear, hey, this is interesting, then you need to stop. Because it's as Bob Ross would call it, painting a happy accident. And these happy accidents also happened to me. So this is how this sound came to life. Okay. The other preset he did mention was then mellow rain flutes. Okay, I don't know what I did there. It's really spacing. Very minimal phase modulation I can see. So now it's again the sinus. So really, yeah, it's going to the advance. Also the volume is again used here. So also the volume, you see the other ones are not used. The ring is active, so its volume, and you see the amount is open. So it has a soft attack. So it really rises in the modulation. I can make it a bit extreme so that you can hear what it does. It's the attack, slow attack. And you see, just by changing this is already a nice new sound. So if I making sounds, so now I'm explaining this piece, but when I'm making sounds and then here, hey, this is getting interesting. Nice. So what I do, this one is nice, was a bit longer. So, and then I would see, okay, how could this be even more cooler? Although I liked it already. So this one has a bit of reverb. We could add also delay. And what is interesting maybe to see and to mention that this preset doesn't use any filters. Because essentially the sound is generated by oscillator 1 modulating oscillator 2. It has its own envelope, and this really creates this. And of course, because of this, it's also very nice on the CPU because filters are bypassed. Not that it's a mega huge difference, but I could add a bit of pitch envelope, which is already active. Yeah, it's a very nice sound. I need to save this one. So I make this also. Save preset as, let's call this June Magic Synth. Okay, June. Not June, but June Magic Synth. So of course I need to tag that, set categories. It's not a pad, it's more a synth sound, but yeah. There's a long release, long attack, not percussive, so okay. So I save this one, and sometimes I continue, then I think, hey, there should be even more inside of this. So maybe a kind of modulation which does this to this sound. Let me see if I could create something like that. I could say the LFO, go free, go sample and hold, ED time based. Let's see if we can make this interesting. Source, the free LFO, and the free LFO, I would connect this to, I give it a try on the oscillator 1 and then the semi-tuning. Let's see what happens, guys. I'm very curious to see what's happening now. So I put it on 7 semi. Not bad, isn't it? Maybe a bit more minimal. Or some. Let's make it a 7th. No, not bad. It's playing a kind of tuning. Yeah, this one has already a chorus. Somebody's mentioned chorus, but I could increase it. It's only a bit atonal, but okay, I save this as maybe say moved. So this is moved. I would put in the tagging then tempo sync, because it's tempo sync, this movement. But it's, you can hear that it's maybe too much of a tone, so maybe we could combine it with a split noise. So now I'm using the noise. Different filter types. Let's see if we get some. Now I can set the value, set value from the filter, set to value 440 Hz. It's a little trick, maybe you don't know that, but there is, if you use the right mouse over the cutoff, you can set to a value. Set to value. So now I put it to 440. More an effect sound, of course. And what I could do is put off the pitch bend here and use the pitch band. It's a trick I do a lot. Pitch band to control the speed. Free LFO speed. So yeah, this is more a FX sound. I save preset as, so I make them downloadable for you guys. So maybe you think, okay, this is nice to experiment with that. I check now the chat room because I'm playing around and maybe I forget something or how do you make the ARP work with these sounds? Yeah, then you get the whole sound will be different, of course. If I would have this one, I need to bring back the attack, put on the ARP. Get all weird things. Random party, isn't it? Not very interesting. So this sound, I would not save it. It's too busy too crowded. It's not very useful musically. But that's how you can use the arpeggiator. But you could also use the arpeggiator as a modulator, because if you put off the ARP and set the mode to modulation source, then instead of the LFO, you also could use the modulation, the velocity settings, or the free row for doing the changes instead of this LFO. So that's also possible. Yeah, so many things. Yeah, absolutely. The audio the audio eng is mentioned that everything made up by sinuses. Totally. One frequency is one sinus waveform, and everything we hear is a combination of these waveforms. Stacking of sinuses, one sounds very short. And of course, I described this in the book, how waveforms are built up in that particular thing. So it's pretty math, essentially. And by the way, the book DVD, it's sold out, but it's gonna be out as it looks now in July again. It's a American publisher, and because many people don't have any DVD player anymore, so what he did is print the book, and you get a code in the book, and then the video content is in the cloud, and you log in with a password, and then you can see the video. So it's gonna be out again. I get regular emails, people asking me when is the book available again. So so very soon in July, if everything goes well. So that's good news. Would it be great to have the effect trail on mod wheel? Yeah, that's still possible. You can use the modulation wheel for controlling also the FX. That's not a problem. I think it's also done in some of the presets. So what I'm doing today is essentially explaining a few presets a customer did send to us, and he's not in the chat room because he has to work, but he will watch afterwards. So if you have a particular preset and you know that I myself did create it, send me an email to info@robpapen.com with an image just like he did. It's from, hey, this is a preset which is can you tell me about it? What is the background of it, and how did it happen? And as mentioned, also I have happy mistakes, and you get then sometimes very interesting sounds. So he did send these presets. So be my guest, send it in, and today is the subject B.I.T with the presets he sent to me. So let's see if we have more. What we had. It was the synth bank. We discussed that. Spectrum lies. Again, also, you see the waveforms changing. It's just like, this sounds more like a digital synthesizer than like an analog type of. But essentially, these type of sounds you easily can make if your modular synthesizer or analog synthesizer has phase distortion input or frequency modulation. Sometimes it calls FM amount, which I have down here, the Prophet 600, which the FM amount, it also creates some interesting textures. And they can put it on the filter, or like the flutes I had, which was a frequency modulation from one sine to another, which created this this flute type of sound. Well, this one, spectrum lies, I call them this way because it sounds like a different digital waveform. But again here, sinus waveform, which is modulated by oscillator 1. And because each oscillator has its own envelope, you see, it creates the overtones. And you can make yourself a lot of variations simply by doing this, by changing the volume or changing the octaves. Here it's sounds almost like a filter sweep but it's the... And of course, if you would pick here a different waveform, so now oscillator 2 modulated by a square. Get some interesting things. Sometimes it starts to get distorted. So mostly the sinus waveform is interesting. So play around with these settings. So one setting which is nice for a guitar sound is, for instance, to have the modulating oscillator for phase modulation about the same as the original one. So I put that one down. So let's see. So let's put the chorus off and delay off. So you hear typically FM sound. This is too much. And if I go down, it sounds already a bit. That's again warm. A bit like a guitar. Oh, there's also a filter. A bit like a muted. Of course, not really 100. Let's see. Now it's getting better. I put the second oscillator 1 octave higher than the modulating one. And now it starts more to get like a... yeah, like a guitar type of sounds. Of course, not really, but a bit like a Fender type. So I'm playing around. Put a bit of a chorus. I'm fiddling around. So the sustain, if it's too deep, you see, the sustain goes too deep, then it goes back to the sine. So then it's when the sustain goes to 0, it doesn't modulate anymore this oscillator. So I have to pull up the sustain a bit to have at least a bit of this remaining. It's not really 100%, but still it's a nice synth sound. What would be maybe interesting is a put a... Nah, the phaser doesn't work that well. Not sure about the phaser. So now you hear it's a bit like a electric guitar. Maybe it should be a bit thinner, or I could give it here a high pass filter. So I'm just playing around a bit. Oh. Bit of distortion. No, that doesn't work. See, the high pass filter cuts away this too much low end. Yeah, it's of course not 100%, but it's, you see how much different tones you have simply by sinus waveform modulated by another oscillator. Interesting, isn't it? Maybe I should save this one also for you guys. It's not a finished preset, save preset, as I call this one almost guitar. Okay, but I guess you get my point from that subject. Okay, so I'm talking. A bit like muted, yeah. And of course, with Bluetooth, you have more oscillators. So there, the guitar sound, which was even used in CS, this CSI series from the United States, this muted guitar from Bluetooth. But there were more than 2 oscillators used. But still, you have now a nice synth sound. So yeah, I think it's worth saving. Save preset. Go to the manager, and it's the need to set long release poly mode. It's AF. Yeah, I think this is not bad. And what I will do is I will make these sounds available in the info section. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm checking the chat room. A dreamy folder. Yeah, it's a bit the ambient folder also is already, I think, not bad for that subject. Is there an ambient folder in B.I.T? I'm not sure. I'm checking. I don't see it yet. Yeah, anyhow, the presets of today, I will put them in a zip file, and then you need to throw them in, or you can load them as a here, of course, simply loading them in the by using the system load preset, and you need to pick then the location where you have unzipped it, or you simply go to my documents or applications, and then on the Mac, and then RobPapen B.I.T banks folder, and you drop them somewhere in a bank where you find them back. So, but I will do this after this live stream. So I hope you enjoyed it. Next week I will be back. Maybe I get some other people requesting, hey, how is that about the sound? And you see, I easily get distracted and move from one sound into another one. Okay, so I hope to see you next week. Stay safe and enjoy your synthesizers.